Welcome back to Have You Heard, the social media podcast by us here at The Social Shepherd, where we tell you everything you need to know about social if you work in digital. My name is Zoe. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO here. And today I'm joined by...
Bella. So I am a senior paid media executive and I work within paid.
Nice. And I'm Rihanna and I'm a senior social media executive in the organic team.
Lovely. So Rihanna, have you been on the podcast before, Bella?
Not. It's my first
time.
Yay.
Welcome.
Thank
and you
you.
guys are matching.
Yeah, we have got a bit of a similar vibe going on here today, haven't we?
Perfect. So today we're going to be talking about social media platform bans, what happens whenever a country does ban a social media platform, new features on Instagram. They're more like UI changes as opposed to actual full changes, social media usage and how that compares to TV. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the popular topic of remote working and Q4 Scaries, which often happens for marketers. So getting stuck in, the first thing we want to talk about is the fact that X has been banned in Brazil. And VPN usage has increased by 1,600%. But interestingly, they actually said that it was illegal to use a VPN for it, and it came with a daily fine of $8,900, which is a pretty hefty daily fine. I mean, I don't really think they're going to necessarily, unless they start checking everyone's laptops and IPs, that's a bit of a task for their data security team. So I don't really know if those fines are really going to come to fruition. But I guess the interesting thing to take away from this, particularly in light of all the conversations going on in the US about TikTok and everything, is what actually does happen when a social media platform is banned in a specific country. And I think it's interesting because there's obviously a lot of uproar about the TikTok situation, but TikTok was actually banned in India and quite a few other countries a couple of years ago. And those creators just went on to different platforms. And we're actually seeing this as well. So not only has VPN usage increased since X has been banned in Brazil, but Blue Sky, not Threads, registered almost 2 million new users in just 4 days as Brazilians moved from X to Blue Sky. So that just shows us that, one, there will be a certain amount of people that will still use platform via means, and others that will just use similar platforms to move to, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
They're ready to pivot.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think sometimes we think about if TikTok gets banned or if X gets banned, that's the end of that type of social media content. But it's not. There's still a want and an appetite for that with consumers. So even if TikTok did get banned in the US, they would probably all just move to Instagram anyway, or another tech startup will just create a dupe of it, basically.
It just creates a bit more space for another platform in a way, doesn't it? I do think there are elements of people who are still going to be stuck in their ways, and for example with X in this instance, and people who are fans of Elon Musk, for example, they're not going to be steering away.
He tweeted and told everyone to get VPN.
Well, this is it, and I feel like for some, what Elon Musk says is what they will do. So obviously
Elon Musk till I die. I'm joking, just to clarify for anyone listening.
That'll be the next snippet that comes out of this. But yeah, I think there'll be some people that aren't gonna be affected by that very much, but others, like you say, they're not wanting to risk all the hassle that would come with getting the fine. But I do think it's quite hard to implement. So if a whole country's worth of people are using VPNs,
how many people are using VPNs on a regular basis just to watch TV shows?
Well,
Thousands, hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
Interesting business to run. Interestingly, what platform would you guys be the saddest if it got banned in the UK?
Instagram, probably.
Insta?
I would agree.
Insta over TikTok?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
How come?
I'm still a bit of a...
You're an Insta girly?
Yeah, definitely an Insta girly. You've got a little bit more going on Instagram. You've got a feed that you can kind of... I find easier to navigate because I've known it for so much longer than TikTok. So I kind of stick with what I know. And although I've adopted TikTok, I'm still...
Well, they're used for different reasons. Like I'm quite reluctant to post myself on TikTok.
Yeah.
But I'm not reluctant to post on Instagram because you're quite used to it.
Yeah, I guess it is that safety net because I've been on it for longer. So I just know how it works. And
Yeah.
It does feel a little bit safer actually as a platform.
It's like my digital home. Like companies have their websites as a digital home. I feel like mine's on Instagram.
Yeah, I feel less exposed on Instagram in a way. TikTok, if you're a public account, I feel like the scope of who you can reach is a lot broader and you can, you know, things can travel a lot easier than they can do on Instagram. But I think, like you said, though, I would say Instagram because I'm using it for slightly different reasons. TikTok being more of an entertainment platform, which I could source from other ways and means, whereas Instagram is more of a case of connecting to friends and family and seeing what they're up to, sharing what I'm up to, rather than it just being entertaining videos in that sense.
Agree. I actually, because Jack and I just took 2 weeks out of the business, which was the first time in 6 years, actually. So, amazing. But when we took the time out, we actually ended up really not being on our phones or like TikTok particularly as much. Like we were on Instagram, but for some reason we just, I don't know, I was reading a book by a pool, so I didn't really want to go on TikTok.
Yeah, understandably.
But now coming back to it and getting back into it a little bit more, I'm like, I don't know if my like FYP doesn't know who I am anymore, but like I'm getting boring content. I'm like, this isn't as entertaining as it once was.
Those random 0 like videos that appear and you're like, not interested. Give me something more.
Yeah, so I don't know. I do kind of agree though, but I do love TikTok. Has a little place in my heart too.
Yeah.
Okay, next update is that Instagram is rolling out comments on stories. So this is what I was referring to when I was saying it's actually more of a UI update than it is an actual feature update, because comments kind of already exist on stories, because this update they're saying is that only followers can see the comments, and those that you follow back can leave a comment. So you can kind of already leave a private comment on a story. It just goes into your DMs and not other people can see it. This is now just, it's going to be stacked in there as you would traditionally, and I believe that other followers that follow you can see the comments. I think it's actually quite a nice feature. I think, do you know what the other thing is, and this is a really kind of sad thing to admit, but it means that people will get more of a dopamine hit whenever they post a story, because we all know that like public likes give us validation. It's sad, mildly pathetic for us as a human race, but that is what we've come to ultimately. And people will get more of a dopamine hit if people are able to see, I don't know if they'll be able to see likes, but if they can see comments and see that public validation, that might encourage people to post more stories, or equally give people more of a steer in terms of the content that people do want to see in their stories, because they're able to get more of a feedback line.
Yeah, I think this is definitely an interesting one from an organic perspective. Firstly, because it might change the way we carry out our community management. Obviously, in terms of when, you know, we're replying to comments and things via feed, this might be different on stories now, because obviously when people are DMing you, it's more of a private conversation between you and a consumer, this obviously being from a brand perspective. But now if the comments are public, there could be ways to encourage them to comment more and having more conversation between people within the community. But on stories instead, I think that could be really interesting.
Agree. And I'm just actually wondering now, I feel like people would be more savage on comments on stories because they're not there forever.
Yeah, it's 24 hours, isn't it?
I feel like we could get like the TikTok harassment on stories now.
Yeah.
Potentially, yeah.
Could be interesting.
They might feel, that security of knowing that it's going within 24 hours, and the fact that it's the stories, people might not quite be aware of how the feature actually works, the new update. So they're thinking, oh, I am commenting a private message.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's not, it's public, but they might not quite realise it yet. So then we might find that there's a transition period of people getting used to knowing how it works.
And I think there probably will be, well, it could go one of two ways. Either there'll be certain types of comments that people now won't reply to stories because they'll be public, they might just DM instead. But we might see an increase in more of the, like, this sounds awful, but like attention seeking comments that are kind of there for people want to get. I wonder if you can like a comment on a story. That would be interesting if people's like comments will get validation through likes. I'm not sure they've given us that information at this point in time.
No, well, it's come up on my phone, so I've actually seen the feature, and I don't think there's been that option yet, but obviously it's relatively new and only just been rolled out, so maybe that's something they could explore further down the line.
You guys are gonna get all the updates. I still can't. I can't post 20 images in a carousel.
Can't you?
No, I update my app every single week and I'm so upset.
It feels like a lucky dip, doesn't it? Yeah. Whose phone's got the feature today? I don't know how that works, but yeah, I mean, I've seen it both on, from personal accounts and also brands too. So that is interesting. But I think my only reservation with it is the way it appears on the story and how that might affect the user experience, because it overlays the frame.
Yeah. So you might have to like bump up all of your one clickable stuff on the stories.
Yeah.
And then ads as well. Is it going to be a feature on ads?
Not that we have heard yet. So I assume that they're going to be testing it, seeing if it's actually a feature that people use organically.
That would be a bit of a pin in the ass for ads, I'm not going to lie.
It depends if they're going to be lasting for the 24 hours.
Yes.
So
actually that's so true, because your story ads will go continuously.
So
they're not it's just a placement.
It's whether those comments last just for 24 hours or if it will become an ad type. So it's a 24-hour story ad type potentially.
That wouldn't make any sense, because
you wouldn't want to,
and to even, you'd have to like get pre-approval for this, because sometimes ad approvals can take hours.
So it can take a day sometimes.
I don't think we can give a statement on ads.
No, we've not heard anything.
TBC.
Yeah, we've not heard anything about it rolling into ads yet.
I do think it's quite a nice feature for organic though, and I think, you know, Instagram have openly said that they are going after being more of a community driven platform, and I think that's how they're going to keep people hooked to the platform, actually, because, you know, you've got these platforms like TikTok, which is an entertainment platform, and we can see, actually, you know, Netflix was the big entertainment platform, like 7 to 8 years ago. Now YouTube's actually overtaking Netflix. Like, entertainment platforms go in waves, and it's very dependent on who is active on the platform there. Whereas if Instagram are hooking into community and they've got the mass populations comfortable being there, it is going to make people stickier to that platform.
Yeah, I'd be quite keen to do some testing here. I feel like there's an opportunity, because this might change the way we curate stories in terms of the CTAs that we have, and rather than pushing people to use interactive stickers,
like tell us what you think type thing.
And obviously, because that's public, and people, rather than a question box where they can't see other people's responses, it's different in the sense that they can see everyone else's thoughts as well. So again, really plays on that interactivity.
Have Meta said about the weighting across like using stickers versus comments? Have they said what's higher in terms of ranking? And
I don't know, they have, but that is a point that I think it'd be good to test, because whether like the algorithm would push a story more that's using comments versus the stickers. I mean, I feel like when Instagram rolls out a new feature, they're quite keen for people to use it, aren't they? So, and
then the other thing as well is that, like, if you posted something, like, I don't know, say one of the fashion brands that we work with, we post a picture on stories of like a particular jumper, for example, that actually gives consumers openly an opportunity to be like, hey, we want the link for this jumper if it hasn't automatically been included, which it should, just to clarify, there should always be a link in there. But it gives that an opportunity to say, we want this. And because, you know, stories can be done slightly more reactively than feed posts can, particularly if you have a very curated feed, you can answer consumers quicker and take on board their feedback a little bit quicker. So I quite like it. I think it's nice.
Agreed.
Next one is interest targeting revamp on TikTok. One for you, Bella.
Yes.
So TikTok has refined interest targeting segments in TikTok Ads Manager, so audience are more precise. Marketers might have noticed a drop in audience sizes, but if affected, the platform suggests adding 1 or 2 additional interests or behaviors. Do you want to give us a quick overview on this?
Yes. So the interest targeting in TikTok, they have been developing since launching their ads platform. Now, historically, it's kind of been that they've modeled the interest audiences. So whilst they're pulling users into the interest audiences, it's being modeled. So it's not as specific or guaranteed that user is definitely in that interest audience.
And that's different to Meta, for example, because Meta just has more data on individuals. Like, we've got pages that people use to like you because your Instagram is connected to your Facebook. You know, back in the day when we were all 14 and like, I don't know, like liking like I Love Harry Styles fan page, for example, like there's more data there. And it's easier for them to build those audiences just because of the length of time and the data that they have.
So now TikTok feels that they've got the amount of data that they need. So the interest targeting that you're now selecting is actually the users. So it's no longer modeled. And that's why people may be experiencing a smaller audience size. One of my clients was affected. So we saw their audience size for their ads go from kind of balanced and a good size down to narrow. And it just started to tighten up our ads, and we weren't utilizing the budget as much as we had. So we followed TikTok's recommendation of adding in a couple of extra interests and an extra behavior, and that instantly broadened it back up. And we've continued to see the ads flow out at the rate that they were prior to this. But it's only been in place since the 3rd of September. And TikTok didn't.
And it's the 5th of September.
It's the 5th of September.
Early days.
However, TikTok didn't provide a reminder. So they first announced this change, I believe, kind of early August time. But there was no reminder set out. So it's probably worth checking your audiences and checking that you haven't gone down into narrow. And if you have, add in those extra interests and behaviors.
For those listening, Bella, what is the issue with having a narrow audience?
Your ads become restricted, so the algorithm just won't push your ads out. So you become limited, and that becomes a part of your historical ad platform.
And your CPMs might become more expensive because there's a smaller pool of people that you're targeting.
Yeah. So higher CPAs, lower click-through rates because potentially not targeting the right people. But they say that there should be about a 10% increase in CTA from just the way that they've changed their categorization of their interest audiences.
So keep your audiences at the right size that they need to be. Make sure that there's enough people for it to be reaching, and then you should see the higher results.
See the improvements.
I was actually explaining to someone in my family the other week. They were like, "How does like Facebook and TikTok know? Like, how if you put in someone interested in gardening, how are they defining that?" And I was like, "Well, they have access to so much data. And it's not just the data that you have on the platform, for example. So what you've searched in the platform, or what you followed, or what you've liked, what you've engaged with, but it's also if you went on a gardening website in the last X amount of days. If you, like, for example, people always like, I went to a gardening shop and I looked at a watering can and then I got shown a watering can on Facebook. How did it do that? And I'm like, well, you've probably done something to indicate, you could have gone on Google, for example, and searched local gardening sites in the area. You might have done research. And I think people forget the
interconnection,
the footprint that they leave, and it's cookies. It's cookies ultimately at the end of the day. 100%. But it's all of everything that you're doing online is utilized to bring those audiences together.
Yeah, and everything's just getting so much smarter. Google's not getting rid of cookies, as we know, so it's just all the ad platforms are just going to gain more and more knowledge about us. So it's that interconnection of all of your accounts that feed all of our interest targeting.
And then interestingly, I had a friend who turned around to me and she was like, do you know what? She was looking for a dress for a wedding. And she was like, I'm just not going to do any of my own research anymore. I'm just going to train my algorithm to send me all of the dresses that I want to see on ads because I can't be bothered doing it myself. And I was like, fair. And I was like, are we getting into, because everyone a while ago was very scared of cookies and they're like, I don't want to be tracked. I don't mind being tracked. I don't do anything dodgy. Like you can look at my cookies. I don't care. I actually would rather get more tailored and personalized ads.
Me too.
Where do you guys sit with that? Are you kind of worried about your security online, or do you not mind it?
I personally have gone past the point. I've used social media for so long. It's like whatever information they've got on me, they've got on me.
Yeah.
Like you say, I'm not doing anything dodgy. Do you know what I mean? As you say, if it helps me out and it provides me with a recommendation that I actually use, then great. But, I think that's just the world we live in now. So I'm quite happy for that to happen. Like you say, like in your friend's instance, if you're looking for something and then you are getting ads served to you that bring you something you want, great. It's cut out the middleman.
Like if I can spend less time researching for something, then give me the ads.
Amazing.
No, I think I am definitely in the same boat. I like getting personalized ads. If I put a cookie blocker on, I'd potentially still be getting ads, but ones that are completely irrelevant to me.
It would be stuff based on like demographic information. So like I'm gonna turn 30 next year, and I would probably just end up getting a whole load of ads for like baby clothes and pregnancy tests. So like I'll take the personalized stuff over the demographic interest.
Yeah,
for sure.
So another interesting fact that's coming out is that social media usage will surpass TV viewers in the US in 2025, which does make sense, particularly as we're going to have a larger portion of the adult population that has had social in their lives kind of from day dot, realistically. So we've got a graph here, which I'm just going to put my tea down and have a quick look at, because it's, hang on, sorry, I hate it when I know you don't like it when I do this in the podcast, Mariah. And lift the laptop up to my face. So we've got social media users is sitting at around 2 to 3% higher than linear TV viewers, and this is the first time this has happened. And YouTube already surpassed linear TV back in 2023, actually. So the way that it goes is most time is spent on YouTube, then we go to social networks, and then we go to linear TV. Mm-hmm. Again, not a massive shocker for us, but that is the world that we live and work in.
Yeah.
Is that a shock to you guys?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think this has been a long time coming, really. I think ultimately the thing is, with social media and YouTube, the type of content that people can consume is so much more varied than that you'd find on TV. For example, whether people prefer long form, short form, they're just, it's more accessible because you've got mobile devices that you can bring around with you, whereas the TV, you sit down in your living room or whatever
and it's
room.
A schedule, and because we're talking linear TV at this point, we're not talking in demand.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking like, the UK equivalent of that would be like BBC, ITV, and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But on YouTube, you can pick what you want to watch when you want to watch it. Whereas on linear TV, you can't do that. You might be like, oh, Harry Potter's on at 11 p.m. I've got to wait 2 hours for it.
It's like checking the Christmas timetable of what's on TV to see when your Christmas movie's on.
That's actually quite refreshing.
I mean, at Christmas it is a little nice thing to do, but day to day, I don't really want to be checking a program to see.
We don't have time to do that. Like everyone is so rushed and so busy that we want to watch what we want to watch when we want to watch it. And I think particularly, got to remember that a lot of TV series are actually on YouTube, and you can just pay for them as well when you want to see them, and the same with films. So not a massive shock. I guess the differentiator in there is social, and I guess the reason why people are spending more time there is because of algorithms that are well trained to show them content that is in line with their interests.
Yeah.
So that's why we need cookies.
I'm so glad they're not going.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. And then Meta has released a Reels performance playbook. So quick summary of what they have said should be done on Reels is make them entertaining, digestible, and relatable. This is pretty standard. Explore audio. Again, voiceovers, music, sound effects, of course. Use filters, use stickers and overlays, nail the hook. I mean, not gonna lie, Meta, this isn't really anything like that is mind-blowing in any shape or form. It's kind of just best practice, and I have a love-hate relationship with best practice, because if everyone did best practice, no one would be coming out on top. So like, it's great as a guide, particularly if you're a beginner, but really people should be testing and learning and coming up with their own sort of summaries and conclusions, and that testing can't really stop, particularly on organic, because things change all the time.
100%. I think it's a good guide, like you say, for people who are starting out and they want a basis to work on. Great, but I mean, you can't apply one concept across all brands and accounts. I mean, I know, for example, they spoke in there, I think, about like using interesting transitions, editing, creative, whereas like the brand I work on, for example, they're a lot more stripped back and, kind of basic in their theme. And we've tested on organic before really wacky, crazy transitions between different clips, and it just doesn't resonate with the audience, whereas something that's a bit more clean cut and simplified does, because I think it's more authentic on their feed, whereas there are other brands that it would make sense for them to have that more highly edited professional approach because it suits them.
I do think that sometimes, particularly when we get into TikTok, people quite often go for the lowest possible hanging fruit, and they go, okay, well, we know how to create a good TikTok. And so like you could post a video of a hamster and a hamster wheel and it'll get 2 million views. But is that going to do anything for the brand? And I think sometimes because we go after the like views, we may end up putting stuff out there that actually could be detrimental to the brand in the longer term. And what's the point in getting 2 million views on a piece of content that destroys a brand identity that you spent so many years building up? And I do think there's kind of this conversation that brands need to have on social at the minute, with TikTok in particular, just because of how the algorithm works at this point in time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Next update is that Snapchat will start introducing ads next to your friends' messages. We've talked about Snapchat quite a lot. I've talked about it with you. You're not a Snapchatter.
Not particularly. I still have it, and there were times where I will use it for messaging purposes here and there. Like there's a few instances where I would, but generally I don't feel completely in the loop with it. But like I know people that are still very
I love
using
Snapchat. I watch the news on Snapchat, but I didn't speak to anyone on it. I'm like Snapchat's biggest advocate, honestly. Like, sign me up. Bella, do you use Snapchat?
I message my sister on Snapchat, and that is the only reason I use it. It used to be like the go-to app for me and my mates to talk on, but now kind of as we've all got older, and it kind of did have a lull for a long time, and I think
it's picking back up again.
It is, yeah. And I think especially for like influencers, they've got some of the best options on there, and some of the highest kind of amount you can make on there, and they are starting to invest more and more into their ad side of things. So yeah, they're trialing new ad types. So we'll see what they're like, but I think one of them is within the instant messaging. So
yeah, so the next thing they're adding is ads next to your friends' messages. So in the like full chat tab, you will have ads popping up in there.
And I don't know how I feel about it.
I think it's quite invasive. I swear that Facebook tried this years ago.
Yeah, I was trying to think about what other platforms do it, and the only one I can really think about is Google with Gmail. There's not really, you've got maybe WhatsApp where an ad might appear a handful of times with Meta. Facebook, yeah, like you say, I think they did try it in Messenger. You still have the option to show.
I think they tried it though, but it wasn't in like the actual chat. It was like, you know, the list of where you see the preview messages. Yeah. It was in there, but this is actually
directly
in the chat. Yeah. So like we could be back and forth and an ad's just randomly going to pop up.
Yeah, I think it is really invasive.
Will you see the same ad as your friend?
I wonder.
That would be interesting. So like if we were having a conversation and would just in our chat, would we both see the same ad?
And would it be related to what you're talking about?
Ooh, maybe.
Because that would feel very
talk about the ad.
Yeah.
And the brand.
I kind of like that.
From
a marketing perspective, from a user, personal perspective, no, but like how much we'd get so much data.
Yeah, true. It's probably why they've done it though. They want to kind of draw brands back, don't they? And
well, they need to make money as well. Like they did use a whole load of users and stuff, but they're doing some cool stuff. Snapchat at the minute, actually, and like you said, I think so many influencers are driving to Snapchat these days. So
it's one to watch.
I'm intrigued to see what happens there. And then moving on to sort of our highlight topics. So buying fake followers in the US can actually end up in legal action. Now, buying fake followers has always been, you know, unallowed by the platforms. And if they catch you doing any type of like follow for follow activity or like for like activity or, you know, just anything of that nature, they might disable your account, they might give you a warning, for example, but now it's actually legal action and has been announced by the Federal Trade Commission so that they are going to combat fake reviews and testimonials by prohibiting sale or purchase and allowing the agency to seek civil penalties against violators. So they're including fake or false consumer reviews, consumer testimonials, and celebrity testimonials. I mean, absolutely, that you should have legal action taken against you, like falsifying
100%.
social proof is not acceptable. Company controlled review websites, again, that kind of completely dismisses the whole purpose of them. And misuse of social media indicators. So this is the big one for us, I guess, is that anyone selling or buying fake indicators of social media influence, such as followers or views or hijacked account, because I guess it creates a false sense of trust for that brand. It's interesting though, because have you guys ever looked into the like ecosystem of fake followers and like fake engagement on social?
I've not, no.
So I know quite a lot about it from a past life. I won't go into detail. But it's like you literally have these like bots, and they tend to be in other countries, and there will just be walls of phones basically set up, and they are just going through and liking accounts, and it's all done through tends to be people will do like follow for follow. So they'll be like sign up to an account and they'll say like okay, my account can follow 250 people a day, and there's a like certain point, like the more you follow in a day, the more you're likely to get caught by Instagram, because there's only so many people you can follow in a day.
I have been told that I look like a fraud before. I've been blocked from liking people's stuff, and I'm like,
I'm just a friendly girl.
I'm just giving some love.
So you select how many you want to do, and then it will then get you 250 followers. So it's like an ecosystem. It's like those like influencer ecosystems people end up in, where they're like, if you like my thing, I'll like your thing, but it's just automated.
Yeah.
And so they do it, and then we pay various things. There's lots of different companies that do it, and then they have just these phones, and they're all just automated, and they are just churning through likes basically. And then for views, they'll just set it, and it will just view, and there'll just be 1,000 phones there that are viewing the same piece of content over and over again. It's not healthy for an account, and we actually a while ago had a few clients come to us, and they're like, oh, our I can say this now because we don't work with them anymore, but it's a bit controversial. But we had a client come to us, and they're like, our CEO really wants to get to 100,000 followers by the end of the year. Now, we don't have the budget to do it like organically through content. Can we just buy the followers? And I was like, that's a really bad idea. Like, just from like the long-term impact that's going to have on your account. Like, you can spot fake followers a mile away. We've all seen those accounts, like 100,000 followers, 10 likes on a post.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's just not even possible. So yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is don't buy fake followers, and this is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Apart from the people running the follower farm
this is
places.
true. But no, it's a good thing. I think especially, like, we don't have any of the influencer team here, but I feel like this is going to be a breath of fresh air for them as well. It's making their lives a lot easier. But we live in a world now as well where, not even just from a brand perspective, but for influencers, you don't need to have tens of hundreds of thousands of followers to get that kind of work or to have an impact. You know, there's content creators, things like that. So
there's also more in, like, because if we look at reels, and like you could have 2,000 followers on Instagram, but you could have like a reel format that every time you post it gets 200,000 views, for example, and you're just smashing. And that's naturally over time going to build up your follower account, but it's more about your capability to discover. It depends what you're trying to do, obviously, with your influencers. Like if you want an ambassador, they need a bought-in followership that want to be there because of that individual. But there's different types of influencers and different types of influence, so it's depends on what you're really looking for.
Yeah, definitely.
So I've got two bits that I want to talk to you both about, and you can be as honest as you want. I will not be offended. But I've seen a lot of chitter chatter on LinkedIn this week about, you know, I think there's been a few statements like all social media jobs should be fully remote. For those listening, we all operate a hybrid model. We have 3 days in office or on a shoot location, 2 days at home, although we do expect people to kind of use their judgment if they're needed in more days than that. And I think there's a lot of trust there, to be honest, for people to kind of do what they need to do. Now, I'm not saying that we're always going to do a 3-2 split. That may change at some point. It would most likely go down rather than up, to be entirely honest. I think we get a lot of benefits from the hybrid structure, but I would say that I own the agency. Like, do you know what I mean? So how do you guys genuinely feel about it? Would you rather have a fully remote role and no repercussions? Okay.
I kind of did fully remote in lockdown. So I did basically 2 years. And whilst it was nice to be at home and be able to do the laundry when I'm working, it's I like being around people, and being able to turn around to your teammate and ask a question makes a difference rather than waiting for a Slack message. And it's a bit of a community as well. I like, having somewhere to come in and feel that, you can really focus in on your work and turn around to a teammate and ask for help. Or if they're not directly on your team, you've got somebody that has been in the business and has a lot of knowledge, and you can gain a lot from just those small conversations in the office, and you can be aware of what's happening in the industry or within the company. And it's nice to be around people. There's something different from seeing people on a screen to seeing people face to face. Having the hybrid is something that I really enjoy, and having the choice as well, I think, is we've got 3 days to come in to the office, but we can choose those days and kind of have that freedom of our own days.
What do you think?
I have quite a similar opinion, mainly because from a personal perspective, I like to be in the office just generally. I'm probably in 4 or 5 days a week anyway. So I think that's just because, in a similar sense, the collaboration element, I really find it helps to be in person. When you're doing a creative role, I find if you find yourself in a bit of a creative block, it's helpful to have people in front of you rather than having to message. And, people might be doing something or they might not see the message immediately, whereas it's a lot quicker and more effective if we're sat in, the organic team, for example, and I'll be like, oh guys, I'm trying to think of an idea for this. Anyone got anything to bounce off of? And then it's solved within 5 minutes. So that's what I find beneficial about coming in. And so I think I would say I wouldn't ever want to be fully remote. But if I was to look at it from a different perspective, I do see how a lot of people could benefit from being fully remote. And I think it's nice to have those options. I think perhaps it's easier to be fully remote maybe for, like, it might differ between in-house versus agency as well. I feel like agency, there's a lot more collaboration going on across departments and things, whereas in-house, it might be a smaller team depending on the size of the brand. But that's kind of me thinking outside my own head, just because I have the preference that I like to be in. But there's instances where, people live far away from the main office, and, sometimes traveling in can have an impact on you. Like if you have a long commute, for example, having the option to remote work means that the pool of options career-wise is open a little more. So like if you live, down in the south, but there's an opportunity up north, you can make the most of that. But I do think I see the benefit of being in an office with other people for a creative role, for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. Obviously, that's why we have the structure that we do. I think it's interesting because you see a lot of these posts about make all roles remote, like blah, blah, blah. But actually, we've had less than 2% of our workforce actually ask if fully remote, or kind of maybe make a grumble about the fact that we're not fully remote. Like very few people, I could count on 2 fingers, like 2 people basically. And it's interesting because I think people think the younger generation just want fully remote roles, but actually, like, we opened our London hub quicker than we thought we would, because the team who were remote as we started that were like, we don't want to be fully remote, like we want to be around people. Same with our New York team, and a lot of people that we interview actually are like, you do have an office, right? Because I need that in my life, like it's good for my mental health, like I need to be able to get out of the house. So I mean, it's an interesting one. I think the main thing is, like, everyone is different, and I always think, like, sometimes life is just lifing. You might need to take a beat, you might need to work from home a little bit more, and I think there should always be an opportunity to have an exception to the rule for when that does happen. But yeah, I feel quite strongly about hybrid working, I'm not gonna lie. I also think it's, like, really good for, so I'm not gonna lie, and you two might take offense to this, I didn't go to uni in COVID times. Did either of you two?
I didn't go to uni, no.
I was actually, yes, during COVID at uni, yeah.
I'm not going to lie. When people went to uni in COVID, they come out and quite a lot of them have no soft skills.
Yeah.
And like, they don't know how to write an email or like behave in a workplace. And I just think you get so much more from seeing good, maybe even bad sometimes, professional interactions and learning like the do's and don'ts. And I think genuinely entry level people accelerate more whenever they spend more time around more senior people. And just have that space.
I think it's that ability to communicate and collaborate easier. Like you can pull a chair up and show somebody how to do something rather than having to share a screen and then you've got a lag and then you can't hear someone properly and it just interrupts that training session. Whereas if you pull up a chair, you can show them and you can get them to actively do it in front of you and show them and have that discussion more free flowing.
And like Slacks or emails are also so tonally, like people can perceive them in completely different ways. So, you know, if you've worked with someone and you know how they interact personally and they might just be like hey, can you do this for me? And they're just probably like, yes. Particularly if you're new to the working world, that could be quite like, they're being blunt with me, but that's just how that person interacts, if that makes sense. And I think it's better for team collaboration culture and like understanding of one another.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
Okay, well, fabulous. And then the one thing I did want to talk about was just Q4 Scaries. Because I feel this, you know, as like someone who's in charge of resourcing and like making sure that everyone has what they need and stuff, like Q4 is tricky for an agency and for any business actually, because even if you're in-house, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how consumers are going to react. We say this every year. Brands will be like, we're going, and going means they're going to start their discounting the week before Black Friday. They'll get to 3 weeks before Black Friday. All their competitors will go and they'll go, no, we're going tomorrow. And then their teams have got to scramble to get it sorted. We've got to scramble to get it sorted. And I think that's just the norm, basically. No matter how much you plan, you've got to kind of plan for extra resource. And we really learned that after last year because Q4 was intense last year. But how do you guys feel going into Q4?
I think obviously it is a really busy time and, you know, we've experienced it before. We kind of know what to expect, but at the same time, there are going to be, you know, moments that you can't predict. And so you do have to be prepared to be a little bit more reactive. And that's not something that you can necessarily prepare for. As you're saying there, like if a competitor does one thing, that might mean that your client changes their mind or wants to adjust their approach. And you have to just react to that in the moment. So I think it's the kind of period that keeps you on your toes, put it that way. And, you know, it's a bit daunting when you're at the start of it, but it's one of those things where, you know, I think as long as the team's all communicating and collaborating as much as possible, then that's the best way to tackle it, and just making sure that everyone's keeping in touch of what's expected for this day, and, you know, making sure everything's been put in place in time for like Black Friday and Christmas gifting, for example.
Yeah, I think being planned to be unplanned is something to think about in Q4. You can't anticipate what competitors are going to do. I think in terms of paid ads, we try and get our campaigns ready well before Black Friday. Any department will be, but paid ads, competitors do just launch random promos and your client might panic and want to launch them.
And it's equally kind of down to us as well to kind of guide that client to be like, okay, actually you should go now, or actually no, you should wait.
Yeah, I think based on what you're also seeing your client competitors do, taking those learnings from the previous year, I think the main scary thing is when you're working with a new client that you've not done a Q4 with before.
Yeah. And that's one of the things we actually ask all clients is like, how do you behave in Q4?
Yeah.
Are you just going to get scrappy and it's going to be all hands on deck? Or are you going to be quite like by the book? And we have some clients who are like PLCs. So they can't actually physically move that quickly internally because there's red tape across things. And then we've got some brands that might be larger businesses, but they still act with a very startup mentality.
Yeah.
So you're gonna need to build that relationship up and that understanding.
Yeah. I think trying to grasp how your client's gonna react in Q4, if you've never worked with them before during that period, just try and understand how they're going to approach it as soon as possible so that you can combat anything that's going to crop up. Yeah.
Does it make you nervous, or do you feel like you got it?
Nervous. I'm always a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
Good nerves, though.
A good
Sometimes I think when you're nervous, it means you're about to do something great.
Yeah. But I think it's exciting because obviously it's a lot of people are engaged around that time. I think there's a lot of opportunity around it. So it is exciting in that sense. I think the nerves just come from, like we said earlier, just waiting to see what crops up. But kind of on that point you mentioned before, though, I think it makes me feel better this year, this being my second Q4 or part of Q4 that I've worked on this client. So I think we have a good relationship in that we understand how each other works. And so I think we can kind of work together in order to deliver this time around, understanding how both our processes generally work.
Nice. What are you both coming up this week? Well, next week.
Wow. What are we doing? We're doing the monthly report. That is one of the first things at the moment. And then there is a shoot within our team. So we're going to be filming some TikTok content, which is really exciting. And then following that, we're moving into the quarterly report as well. So it's kind of nice to see. Thankfully, they don't overlap too much. Yeah, it's very a data couple of weeks. But I don't mind that. I think in organic, it's nice to kind of bring that in every now and again. So that's kind of what's on our roster at the moment.
Nice. Bella?
Yeah, so we're in the depths of reporting as well, start of the month. But I have got a new client onboarding kind of towards the end of this week, start of next week. So that is an app based.
Very nice.
Yeah, so very exciting. App-based client. So a lot of testing we can do on Meta with the app objectives and ads. So yeah, just strategizing at the moment and ideating the structure. So yeah, very excited. Not worked on an app before, so
lovely. Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you to everyone that has listened. Please make sure to follow, subscribe, anything you can do. These podcasts come out every single week alongside our newsletter as well. So have a lovely week, and we'll see you next week.